behalf of, where I, Dara Kalima, the community poet, chat with folks who speak on behalf of their respective communities. I think we're in for a super special treat. I have been in love with this individual for a very long time because we have been sharing stages at a special fundraiser for those who are living with breast cancer. And they are just such an exquisite storyteller. And I don't think they know how long I've been a fan of theirs, because as we were talking right before we started recording, they were like, oh, we started speaking when we did this one interview, but we've shared the stage multiple times before then. And that's okay, because I like to hide in the background and then they disappear before I can ever say how amazing their stories are. So that's perfectly fine. But they are just an exquisite storyteller, and they have such a great presence, and I cannot wait to get to learn more and more and more about them in this conversation. So I had to have them on this show to have this conversation, because their Facebook presence is the most hilarious thing in the world, and I just love it. So that all said, please tell us your name.
My name is Phillip Giambri,
Awesome.
also known as the Ancient Mariner.
Awesome. So hi, Philip. What pronouns do you prefer that we use for you?
Philip.
Your pronouns.
Pronouns describe me. My pronouns would be about me. I'm going to throw a bunch of words at you. Independent, principled, honest, funny, sarcastic, loving, tell it like it is, don't care whether or not anybody likes me.
I'm here for all of them. I am here for all of them. So if you, because I didn't ask for a bio, because, bios get boring and people don't read them properly and no one wants to read a whole long thing or have it read about them. So tell us about yourself. What would you have people know about you, including those pronouns you just said about yourself?
I'll give you a very brief bio that I use. I've lived a life others dream of or fear. That's how I live, and that's what I write.
Ooh, I love that. I love that. See, this is why I said this person is so dynamic. Oh my goodness. Okay. So, what communities are you part of or do you represent?
Well, I lived in the East Village since 1971, and I've worked there since 1968. The East Village is my community, and I'm a big part of the art community, and also for many years was a social activist in the community. So I feel like this is my home, and I have no plans to ever leave.
Awesome. Okay, so when you said social activist, so can you tell me a little bit more about this activism?
About the what?
The activism?
The activism. Well, when I moved in this neighborhood, I moved here because it was cheap and I didn't have any money, obviously. And there were 21 methadone clinics from Houston Street to 14th Street. So it wasn't a very safe neighborhood. I live on St. Mark's Place. I've always lived on St. Mark's Place since I moved down here. And it was a pretty dangerous street at night. There was a lot of drug traffic. So within a 2-year period after I moved here, we organized a block association, which was unheard of at the time around here, apparently. And I volunteered to be the police department representative, to attend police community council meetings and things like that. And every month I got a crime report. And we thought it would be nice, since 8th Street, St. Mark's Place was like the drama central of the East Village in the hippie days. We asked the police precinct for a beat cop. And they said, beat cops, we don't do that anymore. We don't have the manpower for beat cops. So my friend Jerry and I went around photographing policemen sleeping in their cars in day and night. We did that for about a month. And I brought all the photos over to the inspector at the police precinct. And I said, you say you're shorthanded, but the guys seem to have a lot of time on their hands with nothing to do. So I'm thinking, if we don't get a beat cop, that maybe these pictures will go downtown somewhere. And within 2 days, they assigned us a beat cop named George Ackerman. And he remained on our block as kind of like the social director until he retired. He never ever drew his gun. He was invited to everyone's birthday parties and bar mitzvahs, invited were part of the neighborhood, became part of our community. So that was the first thing that I think we accomplished socially. The next thing we did was the bicentennial came up in 1976, and we applied for a grant from the Molly Parness Foundation that was giving money away for needy neighborhoods. And we had 26 flowering pear trees planted on 2 blocks on St. Mark's Place. We told them that our street was originally the road through Peter Stuyvesant's pear orchard, and we wanted to historically return the pear trees to St. Mark's Place. And they did that. So we had a whole 2 blocks full of pear trees now. The next thing we tried to do was we had block parties, which in those days were not where you just had guys selling sunglasses and t-shirts. We had a lot of talented people in our community, and we had block parties to raise money to build enclosures for the trees and to have window gates installed in people's apartments if they wanted them. The city was going to give us the window gates for free, but we had to have them installed. So we had 3 block parties that we organized, and we raised enough money so that anybody in the block association or in the neighborhood who wanted window gates got them installed for free. We did that. We also started a newsletter, of which I was the editor of the St. Mark's Place Block Association newsletter. So we caused a lot of trouble.
That is so impressive. I don't think I can look at St. Mark's the same way ever again. That's so impressive. So can I ask you where you were before you got to St. Mark's, or where did you come from before you landed on in East Village?
Well, before I moved to the East Village, I was living in Spanish Harlem.
Okay.
I happened to be the only white face on my block. And I didn't have any money, obviously, or I wouldn't have been living there. And I was working on East 4th Street at a theater as a stage manager. And I had to walk from 95th Street to 4th Street and back every day because I couldn't afford to go. And every time I left my block, the teenage kids at the high school would mug me. And, other than my Timex watch, I really had nothing of value. But it kept repeating, and they never hurt me or anything, but it was just annoying. So I had friends who lived in this neighborhood, and I got an apartment on St. Mark's Place, and the rest is history. You could read it in my books. In between that, I lived briefly with a girl in Washington Place, but that didn't last very long.
Okay.
The neighborhood was too nice for me.
Wow. So if you guys don't understand that, this neighborhood that he's speaking of is pinnacle part of New York City. If you I grew up, I wasn't alive during most of the times that he just described. I wasn't even a twinkle in my parents' eyes at that moment. But my favorite part of the village was going to St. Mark's Place. So I'm sad going to St. Mark's Place now, and it's not the same at all. And seeing the stores that I grew up going to not being there. And so I can't even imagine the changes that you have also seen during this time.
Well, my neighbor, Ada Calhoun, who grew up on this street, I've been friends with her parents for 50 years. She had a best-selling book out a few years back called St. Mark's is Dead. And basically, everyone who's visited this neighborhood since the Native Americans were here, when they came back, always said, "Oh, it used to be better when I lived here. It really sucks now, St. Mark's is dead, it's no good now." And every generation says that. Everyone who ever went to college around here or hung out here always comes back 15 years later, a little overweight, a little too much, and they're always bad-mouthing what the neighborhood's like now. And I've been through 5 generations here. It never changes. It's always changing. That's what I love about it.
I get that. I definitely understand that. So something beautiful about your communities. You clearly have not left there. So tell me, you've seen it through 5 generations, as you just said. So what is it? What is something that's beautiful about it that we should all know?
I grew up in South Philadelphia in the 40s and 50s, and it was very racially violent. It was segregation, Everybody hated everybody. It was so bad that like Italians in South Philly hated Italians in North Philly, blacks in South Philly hated blacks in North. Everyone was so regionalized and compartmentalized that if you left your neighborhood, it was dangerous. And I never felt comfortable with that. I felt like I was pretending that I was a racist and I was pretending that I was all these things that I didn't feel. And I never really felt like I could be myself. I left home at 18 and I never went back to Philadelphia again because when I came to New York, I felt like this is where I belong. Everybody's here. Indians, Puerto Ricans, Polish people, Ukrainian people. My neighborhood is like the best mixture of everything from street bums to high class movie actresses. Helen Mirren has an apartment on my block. That's what I love about it. It's a great mix. And I love the diversity of food and people and art. Everything about it is constantly churning and it's exciting.
Oh goodness, you made me want to go walk through the street right now. I'm nowhere near it, but I'm like, oh man, I haven't been down St. Mark's. It's at least since before the pandemic. Like I haven't walked down that street in a while.
We're coming back.
Okay.
You know, the neighborhood's changing now. There's a lot of hipsters around here, what I call them. They're apartments. My apartment's rent stabilized. Otherwise, I couldn't afford to live in this neighborhood anymore. The average rent in a 6th floor walk-up is like $3,000 a month now. There's people in my building paying $5,500 a month because they have a backyard. The girls above me pay $3,700 a month for the same apartment I have. So it's changed. You know, we never before saw people waiting for Ubers with golf clubs on St. Mark's. Things are a little different.
That is a little different, but you know, my favorite place was going to the comic book store. And so didn't that closed, right? It closed a couple of years ago. The comic book store.
Yeah, the comic book store's gone. Yeah.
Yeah. And so once I saw that was closing, my heart broke a little bit. And I was just like, well, there's nothing for me on St. Mark's anymore because that was my stop. That was the place I went to.
Well, the neighborhood's transitioned over. You know, most of our neighborhood is campus area for NYU. If you want to send your kid to NYU, you want to go there, it costs $85,000 a year. So as a consequence of that, even during the recession and during the pandemic, the majority of the people that are at NYU now are from Asian countries, from upper middle class families that have money, that can afford to pay $4,000 a month rent and furnish their kids' apartment and pay $85,000 a year for school. So the neighborhood has changed into like a little Tokyo, they call it. I think. There's a very big Asian population here, and your comic book store and a lot of the hippie stores that we're at here are all, you know, Asian restaurants and Asian apparel stores and things like that. So
that does make sense because I have gone. My brother lives in Japan, and we have gone to that same area for certain food that, like, he took me to like I guess it was a Japanese restaurant, but like so that I could have something that was more traditional for him now. And so we have gone over there, but I also know the NYU price because I am an alum. So I know that that's the whole area NYU has taken over.
The good thing is, as I write about in some of my books, is that aside from all of the glossy appearance that tourists see now, there's still a lively underground of people who are leftovers from the beatnik era like me, from the hippie era, from the punk era, from all the different generations. I live right next door to Club 57, which is a real big club back in the 80s. And all of these leftover people who didn't die from drugs or whatever and didn't leave New York, they're still here and they're very active. The punks learned to play their instruments finally, and they're really good musicians. They write good songs. They play regularly. We have a little band of maybe 400 or 500 people in the neighborhood who go to each other's poetry readings, who go to each other's open mics, who go to each other's music events. And there's scattered throughout the East and West Village, there's still places where you can do that that aren't overrun with hipsters looking for, you know, craft cocktails.
That is amazing. I mean, we do know that there's like, I mean, I guess it's still in the village. the Red Room, and that's in the Village, right? That's technically.
Well, the Red Room has changed now too. The Red Room is a great venue. The KGB bar below that was a great venue, famous for reading series. But because of, I guess, financial circumstances now, if you want to have a book party there, the same as Parkside Lounge, which was, I had all of my book parties there, you have to guarantee them so much for the room for the night, $200, and then $500 at the bar, and so much for tips, 60%. And if you can't meet that, you have to pay that out of pocket. If your people don't, poets, they come and they have one glass of wine and they're going to sit there for 3 hours. So to make $500 on a night with a bunch of poets drinking one glass of wine, you're going to be out a few bucks.
That is hard. This whole economy right now is messing up a lot of things.
So we're running out of venues where you can still have some, Linda Kleinbub and I host readings, and right now we're reduced to reading mostly in community parks and gardens because they don't charge you to read there.
But then you can only do it in the good weather.
We did it for 3 years before the pandemic, and we've already started last Saturday or last Sunday. We read at a new park that opened on 4th Street, and we get good turnout. We have a good following. We get 35 to 50 people, and it doesn't cost us anything. We have a good time. People enjoy it. When the weather gets really warm, we bring along cold watermelon and bottles of cold water for them.
Okay. Well, that's fair. So is there a unique fact about your community that we should know?
Is there anything what?
A unique fact about your community?
I think the blend of cultures that produces restaurants, I'm within a 5-minute walk from any country in the world's food. So I don't think you could find that anywhere else. I haven't, at least. And that, I eat out every night. I don't cook. So I have Ukrainian food every Monday night. I eat at B&H and have Jewish food on Tuesdays or Wednesdays. I have Italian food. I have Indian food. I have Mexican food. I have Chinese food. I have Korean food. That's what I love about it. That's unique here.
That sounds amazing.
It's reasonably priced. That's the best part.
That is true. There are some nice little cheap eats down in the Village, and just depending where you go. My friend used to run a restaurant. I'm so sad it closed. It was right around the corner. Called Hop Chow, and it was a fusion place, and it was only there for like 2 years or so, if it made it that long. But it was Asian food with it was Southern food. It was soul food with Asian seasoning, and it was so good. Like, I swear, if I could find a place that I ever have a wedding at, and I could have him cater it with his food, I would do it because it was so delicious. And I was like, I would go to Hop Chow just to have some. And I mean, it had graffiti on the wall, but it was like really cool. It was so Village. It was so Village because it was that same mix of everything right there. But yeah, didn't unfortunately last long, but a lot of restaurants unfortunately don't. Yeah. So is there any fun facts about yourself you want to share, so people get to know you?
Wow. I'm going to be 81 years old in August.
No, you're not.
Yes, 81 years old. And I retired from 15 different careers.
15?
Yeah, at least 15. My last one was as an IT manager at a hospital uptown.
Wow.
And I think what's unique about me is I've never been qualified for any job I ever had. I never went to college. I never took training in any specific things that gave me jobs. How I would always start is helping somebody or saying, hey, I'll work for nothing if you teach me how to do this. And then I would work my way up. And so most of my life I've got through without any qualifications for a job. And I've had a very checkered career, but very good. That's fun.
Wow.
Since I retired, I started a full-time career as a writer and as a poet and as a curator. I ran a beautiful reading series in the East Village for 5 years. It was very popular. I closed 3 bars doing that.
Doesn't sound fun, but That's great. That goes back to your venue issue, right?
Yeah, so yeah, we do stuff. Another thing that you've done open mics. I know that. One of the changes I feel that I've helped is when I started doing open mics around, I don't know, 2008, 2010. They would always put the features on at the end of the evening when everybody was already gone or drunk. Uh, the people never started the shows on time. So if you're on open mic and you're supposed to get 5 minutes, they sat talking with their friend for half an hour and they cut you down to 3 minutes. They never introduced anybody properly. They never respected the features or make sure that your microphone works, check the lighting, things like that. So after 4 or 5 years of being what I felt being treated badly in open mic venues, I decided to start my own program, and everybody said I was crazy. And I said, I'm going to have 4 features, and we're going to pay for it by just a minimum amount we need to get a room. And everybody, all the producers of all the shows that I went to for all those years, you know most of them, they said, once you give somebody a feature, you'll never see them again. That was everybody's line. You give somebody a feature, you'll never see them again. And I ran a show for 5 years, and after 5 years, I had over 200 some features, and most of my open mic readers every month were former features.
That's great.
Everyone, I made up a program for everyone with their picture on it and their bio, and I gave it to people when they came in. I gave everyone a T-shirt that said Silver Tongue Devil on it, which was a recognition that I respected their work, and people felt like it was a welcome and loving environment to produce things in. And that's what I wanted to feel like when I read places. So I felt like I helped generate that. And after that, other open mics started moving features to the beginning of the show or early in the show. They started handing out programs. They started reading bios. Nobody ever did that before. So I felt like I did have some influence in the community.
That's amazing though. And it's important. That's such an important recognition, because I do think a lot of places don't inspire features to return. It's not about features not wanting to return. It's about that sense of community. Like, I've been places where the way you've been treated, you don't want to return.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I've been to one place where they begged me to come back, and I was just like, I had to sit on your floor while I waited to perform, and you ignored me when I mentioned a concern. I'm not doing this again. No, like, no.
Another important learning tool I felt I did, which no one did, is everyone, open mic or feature, whoever performed at my show or read at my show, I did a videotape of them. I edited, put a title on it, and posted it on YouTube and sent it privately to the person. And they asked their permission to make it public. But it was there not so much to show everybody how great talented you were, but for you to see yourself and hear yourself and learn to improve what you do. Because open mic is a learning experience, and that's how you learn. And watching, wow, I was reading too fast. No wonder nobody uploaded it. So I thought I posted over 2,000 videos during the run of my show, and people still talk to me about them and say that was one of the nicest things that ever happened. So I feel like I mentored some young people, I helped some people, and I made the open mic business a little easier and better for people.
That is actually really great that you do that, because people don't get that a lot of the open micing is testing your work, it's testing your performance. And that's why I'm always recording. If I can, if I have the ability to record myself, I'm always recording, not out of vanity, not just to post it. Half of the things I record, I don't post, but it's just to see how I performed it so that I can do better. A lot of people don't realize that they actually need to do that to get better at their craft. So that was really generous of you to do that for people. But you mentioned that you were a stage manager or something like that some time ago before all of that. I would love to know a little bit more, if that's possible.
Well, I worked in the theater before I got into technical work, but I went to I got a scholarship to an acting school in Philadelphia, a 2-year acting school. And I went to summer stock as a 27-year-old with a community of apprentices who were all New York graduates, 17 years old from, the New York, what is it, the acting school that all the New York kids go to.
Juilliard or one of those?
No, the high school.
Okay. Oh, yes. Okay.
I was 27 years old and pretty naive. I had never smoked dope in my life and stuff. And all these 17-year-old kids, and none of them were virgins. They all drank a lot and smoked a lot of dope and stuff. And I felt like I was the weirdo in the crowd, But because of my age, I got to audition for 3 or 4 parts during the course of the summer, and I got them. And as a result of that, the director liked my work, and he hired me the following season as an equity actor with a contract. So I saved a year of apprenticeship. Plus, while I was there, I learned to stage manage, and that served me well. When I moved to New York, the stage manager that I worked with recommended me for my very first job. I was in New York like 1 month, and I got a job on East 4th Street at the Fortune Theater. And I was a stage manager, assistant stage manager with an equity contract, supposedly, which I didn't see for a long time. But I was the sound man and the assistant stage manager. Raul Julia, Michael Douglas, and the guy that was Uncle Jr. in The Sopranos was in it, Dominic Canese. They were all in that. So we had a crazy time, a lot of complicated sound things, which I did really pretty good because in the military I did sound work. So about a week before opening, they started adding things. They gave me offstage lines to read and told me that I was, because of the union contract, there were no understudies for the lead. So they made me the understudy for Michael Douglas and Raul Julia. So the night before opening, I said, "Where's my contract, guys?" And they started stuttering. And I said, "I'm not coming tomorrow night to the opening if you don't give me a contract right now." And it was like huffing and puffing and 3 hours of yelling. And I got a union contract.
I love it.
The show only ran a week. I got a 1-line review for my offstage voice, artfully narrated by Phillip Giambri. And Michael Douglas gave me his wardrobe from the show when it closed. Ray-Ban sunglasses and a really beautiful suit. And that I used to audition in for several years.
Wow.
Whenever
That is amazing.
Whenever I couldn't get acting work, I did technical work after that, because that sound guy that provided the equipment for that show started getting me a lot of work because I was a good sound man and that stage managing and that. So I unfortunately gained a reputation as a good technical person. And the one time I actually got called for a Broadway show by the director who gave me my Actors Equity Union card was a producer who I worked with for sound equipment and rented equipment to. And he said, "Phil, come on, you're serious? Come on, actors are a dime a dozen. We need good sound guys, So he wouldn't, even though I would pass the audition, he said I did a good job. They said, you have no Broadway credit. You really can't get this. And the director kept insisting that he wanted me for this part, which was a lead in a Broadway play. And I did 3 auditions before they finally said, it ain't happening. He's not going to be there. So that was that. I never got that part.
Wow, that's heartbreaking.
I'm used to it. When I graduated acting school, I was told I had a part in a spaghetti western in Spain with Robert Stack, and that I was supposed to get my shots and get a passport and do all that stuff. Well, I had just applied to be an apprentice at Summer Stock. And the only good advice my father ever gave me was, go to Summer Stock. If the movie happens, fine. If it doesn't, at least you had 1 year credit as an apprentice, And it turns out the movie was never made, of course. So I'm used to appointments. I've had so many people tell me they want to do documentaries about me. They're going to, make a Broadway show out of my book, Bonnie Boho. Everybody promises all kinds of stuff. It never happens. I don't believe anything until I see it now.
That's true. And so you get the contract, right?
Show me the contract. Show me the money.
Yeah. I love it. Yeah, I come from a theater background too, but and I mostly ended up tech, but it's only because I didn't like acting. In the end, I was like, acting is like, I hate the rehearsal process. So as an actor, I hate the rehearsal process. I can sit there in the booth, I can sit there as a director, but as an actor, I'm like, you want me to say this line again? Like, I can't do it. Like, I hate it. But as a poet, I can do it because it's shorter. It's not the same length of time. I can't, as an actor, I hated it. So, but I understood all your, but I only got to, I got to stage manage equity crew. I was never at a level or a stage manage equity actor. So I understood the contract, but I
Yeah.
was never doing equity
Well,
anything.
the benefit of having an acting background and a technical background is that when you go to feature, you know how to use a microphone, you know how to look and see where the light is, where other people just stand with the paper in front of their face in the dark off the microphone, and they have no clue, and nobody ever tells them that they're doing that when they're doing it. So that theater training actually benefited me in the short, in the long run for things that I do now. And I also know how to treat other people when I'm working with them on stage. Teach them how to, look for the light, look for the mic, and don't be off mic, or don't put the paper in front of your face. So it was very beneficial in the long run. So yeah, and I don't use that fake poetry voice that everybody uses that they learn in the new school for the master's program.
What fake poetry voice are you talking about?
Fake poetry voice that everyone repeats the same romantic line sound over and over and over. It's like a slow, sleepy version of rap where everything sounds the same.
See, I have feelings about that because I do use it, but I only use it when I do erotica. When I'm not doing erotica, I don't use the voice.
I find that terminally boring. That I go to where people read like that, I just tune out. They might as well be reading the phone book as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I think there's like two different places that people get this from. There's two styles of poetry that people start doing. They still think they have to do whatever they think the beatniks did in terms of that real cool beat sounding thing that was the thing that came from the past, and like that thing that they always portray old poetry having to sound like, older poetry is having to sound like. And then you get the slam poet cadence thing that people feel like they have to do too, and it's just unnecessary as well. But you do, if you are doing erotic poetry, you do have to put on a little bit of a voice,
I,
because I mean, you can't really wet some senses with like talking just like your normal voice,
well,
depending.
but what you lose is you lose interpretation and value of the words. By having a repetitious sound, you give up the meaning of the words. And I find
True.
that unforgivable in a writer. No matter how beautiful your words are, if you get monotonous, boring, rhythmic sound, nobody's listening after the first three lines.
I agree with you. I completely co-sign that. So even if you are doing, even if you have to put on a voice to do the performance and to relay what you're doing, you still have to vary up what your voice is doing.
You have
And
to
that is absolutely true.
you have to interpret it. You have to
Yeah.
interpret it. That's what acting school taught me, at least that much. So yeah, I have a difficult time with going to academic readings, which is why I don't go to KGB bar much, because they're really boring. They're really boring.
It's interesting, but it's so the when I go and listen to people perform, I'm studying. I'm studying people performing when they perform, and what I'm listening to is, what are they doing? What are they saying? How am I responding? So when I'm not paying attention, I'm going, well, why am I checking out? Like, what did they do to make me not want to pay attention to their poem, so that I know not to do that when it gets to my poem? And oftentimes it's that rhythm, it's their delivery. There's this one poet who comes on our open mics. We do a virtual online open mic, and their poetry is amazing. The things that they talk about is amazing, but they do the voice. And once they start the voice, I start zoning out a little bit, and I'm like, man, I really wish I heard what they said. But I have to acknowledge that it is that there's a melody, there's a flat thing that they hit when they do their voice. And thank you for pointing that out, because now that you've said it, I'm like, yes.
I'll tell you something. in addition to all of my other things, I used to do a lot of photography too. And I used to take photos at poetry readings and stuff. And when I first decided that I was actually going to try and read, I saw this guy, his name was Joe Yoga. He was a musician, an artist, a performer, a spoken word performer, a poet. He was a million different things. And he was very popular downtown for a while. Probably still is. But the very first time I saw him, he came out in a black business suit with a skinny tie, and he looked like the straightest guy in the world. And then he just went bananas when he was reading his poetry, started throwing pages in the air and stuff. And I looked at him and I was like, wow, this guy, he captured the audience like instantly. And afterwards I said, why do you do that? How do you do that? And he said, this is a business. He said, if you want to sell books, people could stay home and read your book. They could buy your book at home. You have an obligation. If somebody comes here to see you read from your book, you have an obligation to entertain them.
Mm-hmm.
Entertainment industry when you're on stage performing. And I said, really? And he said, yeah, otherwise just stay home. Let them buy your book on Amazon, you know? And that stuck in my head. I don't go do Joe Yoga, but I realized that you have to engage people when you're reading. You have to understand what you're saying when you say it. You just can't monotone that, you know, Carl Sandburg reading.
You can't monotone it, and it's on both extremes, right? You can't get there and just yell either. You can't just
exactly.
yell.
Right.
You can't just be somber. You have to do it all, because otherwise you're half of, again, it's like everything, half of communication is your body language, right? And even part of your body language is your tonal communication. And it's not just how you are, it's not just what you're saying, it's not just your words, it's really how you're saying it. Yeah.
I feel that I'm a better presenter than a better writer. I have a lot of friends who are much better writers than I am, but they can't sell their work when they speak. They don't know how to deliver their work to make it interesting to people. I think the one thing that is my gift from theater training is I connect very well with people when I read my stuff, and they think it's really good. Other people are a lot better, but they think mine is good because they got something from it. It touched them, and they'll go online and they'll buy my book. So,
I mean, I own your books, so I guess that's true. You definitely, your reading of them, I just want to sit there and listen to you tell your stories all the time. Like I admit that I haven't necessarily read your books yet, but I have I stopped buying, I had this rule where I had to stop buying books, because like books that weren't just books, because I had to read everyone's books that I know. And I want to write reviews to people's books that I bought, and do those people justice. But so the only books I'm allowed to buy are the books of people I know right now. But everyone I know is writing books because of the pandemic. So it's been really still hard to catch up. And then I only read in transit, which has made it even harder because I'm only going into work 2 days a week. So I'm not reading on the train like I was to catch up and work through everything the way that I was. So yeah, it's I haven't been able to read through everything, but every time you're even, and I've heard the same story from you, right? Because we're at the same event. But every time you're reading it, I'm just like, oh man, I want to know your stories. I want to just like soak it all up, because the way you deliver it is not the boring recitation of this thing from this book that you've read. I really feel like I'm there with you and Bonnie, or these two characters, Bonnie, is Bonnie, right? Or is it Bunny? Now I can't get the name right. What's the name of the character in the story?
Blondie and Boho.
Boho. Okay, see, there you go. I'm messing this up badly, right?
Boho is short for Bohemian. That's what the hippies used to call the leftover beatniks, bohos.
Got it. So like I want to be there in those moments and just like be a fly on the wall because of the way you tell the story. Like I feel like I'm sitting there hanging out and hearing this story and just like, yep, exactly. So I think it is absolutely in the recitation. So if there's something, is there something about your community that's frustrating to you?
Frustrating is the lack of remaining venues that are affordable for artists to perform or display their work, or do theater or music pieces. And the pandemic killed a lot of places. And the new places opening up are all catering to people with more money. So the venues have been narrowed down to very few. There's still a few left, but not a lot. And so, summertime we're good for outdoor spaces, but in the wintertime, you're going to do church basements and libraries and, hopefully places that don't charge a lot of money. But that's the biggest frustration right now. The East Village was always an opportunity for low rent people to be able to produce art. And it's getting harder and harder now. It's still there, but it's not as easy.
So do you think this will make for more creativity in terms of where we pop up, or do you think it's just we're running out of even creative spaces to do that?
Well, what I'm kind of hoping is that a lot of the companies that had people working at home during the pandemic realized that they're paying ridiculous amount of high rent for space in New York City and Manhattan. And they could pay these people their same salaries at home and save millions of dollars every year by not paying rent. And there's a lot of empty real estate right now, not in my neighborhood, but around the city. And this happened like back in 1982, I think, where there were high rises built in places where they were converted to places for artists who lived that the city took over and gave them fixed rents and things like that. West Bath, up at 43rd and 8th Avenue. So I'm kind of hoping that maybe the city will wake up and say, wait, the space is empty. Let's give it to artists, give them a shot. I don't know if it's going to happen. Maybe we're all too greedy for that now, but that's my hope.
Yeah, one of the first places I was performing at was a storefront in Alphabet City. It was a store. It was essentially a store that was abandoned. It looked like this. It literally looked like this exposed brick. We should not have been there. I actually got injured there. That was my first real injury. Because and it wasn't even inside, the entry was crumbling. So I actually walked through the floor. I went ankle deep into the concrete in front of the entrance. So we probably should have never been there. I don't know what happened to the place after that, because I was no longer invited after I got injured. Because I said, hey, pay me. And they said, don't come back. But it was still great to be in those like really dingy, weird places that like, I don't even think the bathroom had a door. I think it was a curtain. Like, I think it was that kind of like vacant space that we should not have been in, but we were using as a theater. And I would love to see us fill those spaces, because that's what happens in any gentrifying place, right? It always starts with the artist, and then comes the Starbucks and the coffee shops, and then everything else happens. But you have to lose everything first, and then we start filling in.
Well, Theater 80 St. Mark's has been on my street as long as I've been here. I used to know the guy who was the original owner. When I first moved to New York, your good man, Charlie Brown, was premiered off Broadway at that theater.
Oh, wow.
They're about to get evicted from that building now. That's gone.
Oh, my goodness.
I don't know how long Theater for the New City is going to remain there. I knew Crystal Fields since 1970, 67, I think.
Not Theater for the New City.
Oh, yeah, we had the East Village Arts Festival there for the last weekend. We had musicians and poets and songwriters. Yeah, it was fun. But those kind of things are getting harder and harder to do. They're getting disappearing. So there's fewer and fewer left. The good news is there's an annual award called the Acker Awards, named after a local East Village artist named Kathy Acker, who passed away several years ago. And 8 years ago, Clayton Patterson, who's like a legend downtown, started an awards for not just the arts in the East Village and the Lower East Side, but for the community. So they give awards for poetry, for filmmaking, for community service, for bread lines, for whatever, but they give Acker Awards out in recognition of people who are contributing something in their neighborhood. They're not just living here and sliding by somewhere else. So I was a recipient of the 2020 Acker Awards for storytelling and for community service. So that was probably the biggest honor I ever had.
That is amazing. Congratulations. And it is completely well deserved. It is so well deserved. I mean, that makes absolute complete sense given what you have done for that community. So I think we're coming towards the close of our interview, but how can we, those of us who don't live in the village, the East Village, who are not part of that arts community, like you just broke my heart with the hearing about the theater for the new city, because that was one of the first theaters. It was, I don't remember, it was a long time ago that I worked there. I didn't work there, but some show I did was there. And then I did try to get a job there and that didn't happen, but that was fine. But like I think fondly of theater for the new city. So that makes me sad. So what can we do to support the arts within that community?
Well, they have theater festivals down here every year that cost like $10 to get in, where people present new work, and there are 10 or 15 different local theaters and basement theaters around here. People can contribute to that. The main thing people can do right now is do a Google search on food pantries in the East Village. They need that now. They need support. They're mostly in churches here, but there are food pantries on the corner of 12th Street and First Avenue. Go there, stick some food in the refrigerator, stick some food in the cabinet. There's a lot of people who can't afford to eat right now.
Awesome. Thank you. And then how do we follow you, Philip? How do we find you and support you? And I know we didn't talk about your books really, but there are books with a plural S there. So tell us, how do we find and support the things that you're doing?
I have an author's page on Amazon. I have 4 books up there currently. And I have a new memoir coming out very soon, in the next month or 2, that will also be on there. I have several hundred YouTube videos. People can look me up. I'm on Facebook. I have an author's page. I have a page called on Facebook, Ancient Mariner Tales. So I'm kind of a publicity whore. It's pretty easy to find me. If you Google my name, there's a lot of stuff comes up.
And tell them your name one more time.
Phillip Giambri. And yeah, go on Amazon and buy a book, please. It would be really nice.
Definitely buy a book. I own 2 of them, and I'm telling you, this artist is so amazing, as you can hear. Like, I'm not saying this myself. You heard it from his own mouth. Like, the things that he's done for the community, and like, I thank you, because I could probably not have had the memories I've had on St. Mark's if not for you and the work that you've done to make St. Mark's the street that it is, you know? So thank you for making my childhood what it's been, what it was, and then my young adult years, and my time at NYU, you know, because that's all been impacted by you. And I didn't even know that, you know, the things that we don't know. It's amazing, the things that we don't know about the people we're around, you know? And so thank you, Philip, for just being you. And thank you for talking on behalf of your community today.
We remain friends. We remain friends. Thank you.
Thank you.